First up is the guy who wants to sue your school. And we'll teach you how to do it. Some of you in here already have sued your school. Please help me in welcoming to the stage from the amazing Alliance Defending Freedom, one of our great co-sponsors, Senior Counsel and Director of the Center for Academic Freedom, Tyson Langhofer.
Good evening. Great to see you all here. Well, it's been a crazy year, am I right? I mean, last year, here at the National Pro-Life Summit, we were celebrating a historic victory as we said bye-bye-bye to Roe. Sort of an inside joke. If you were here last year, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? But over the past year, we've experienced a number of losses and disappointing setbacks. Since 2022, abortion has been on the ballot in 7 states: Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan, Montana, Kansas, California, and Vermont. Now, disappointingly, abortion won in all 7 states. Only 2 of those states are reliably liberal blue states: California and Vermont. 3 are conservative red states: Kansas, Montana, and Kentucky. And 2 are purple states: Ohio and Michigan. Now, these results have led many pundits to declare that pro-life legislation is dead on arrival. They say that the pro-life community has pushed too far in overturning Roe. They say that most residents of states that have passed very restrictive abortion laws believe the lawmakers have gone too far. Now, unfortunately, these losses have caused a rift in the pro-life community about the underlying cause of the losses and the proper strategy for moving forward. Some politicians and political commentators who profess to be pro-life are criticizing pro-life legislation and groups that are seeking to enact legislation that they deem to be too restrictive. Now, in light of these recent disappointments, the organizers of the Pro-Life Summit asked me to come in and give a motivational speech. Now, I'll acknowledge that I wasn't the committee's first choice. So I'm gonna show you a video that I make my kids watch first thing every morning before they do anything else.
Do it! Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday, you said tomorrow, so just do it! Make your dreams come true! Just do it! No, what are you waiting for? Do it! Just do it! Yes, you can!
And watching it might give you the motivation you need if you're trying to run an Ironman or complete a CrossFit workout or run through a brick wall or walk across hot coals in your bare feet. But if we're truly going to accomplish our goal of making abortion unthinkable, we're probably going to need to do more than watch a video every morning of Shia LaBeouf screaming at us to make our dreams come true. After all, abortion is a political issue, and politics is complicated because politics involves people, and people are complicated. However, even though as individuals we're complicated, humans do have specific characteristics that are relatively constant and predictable. This means that we can learn lessons from successful civil rights movements in the past. And one of the most successful civil rights leaders in America's history is Martin Luther King Jr. One of Dr. King's most famous writings is his letter from Birmingham jail. The pro-life movement can learn a lot from this letter because many of the criticisms being leveled at the pro-life movement today are similar to the objections the civil rights movement that Dr. King addressed in this letter. So let me set the stage a little. As the title denotes, Dr. King wrote this letter while sitting in Birmingham, Alabama, in a jail. Dr. King came to Birmingham to participate in a nonviolent protest of the racial segregation laws that were in place in Birmingham and most of the southern states at that time. About 1,000 other activists joined with Dr. King as they peacefully marched towards City Hall. The marchers eventually came to a police barricade. The police surrounded the crowd and began making arrests. Dr. King and around 50 others were arrested that day, and they were charged with parading without a permit. While he was in jail, Dr. King learned that 8 white religious leaders in the South had issued a public statement of concern regarding the public protest. Since he had some time on his hands, Dr. King wrote a letter responding to their concerns. Now, it's important to understand that all of these leaders were men who said they agreed with the cause of civil rights. Dr. King says he believed they were men of good, genuine goodwill and that the criticisms were sincerely set forth. However, their statement criticized the timing and methods that Dr. King employed in fighting for civil rights. So I want to address 3 of those criticisms because the pro-life movement faces these same criticisms today. The first criticism was that the nonviolent march and other acts of civil disobedience were extreme. Dr. King wrote that at first he was disappointed that his fellow religious leaders would view his nonviolent methods as extreme. After all, other civil rights leaders at the time were calling for and engaging in actual violence. Dr. King, on the other hand, was adamant that all his followers engage in nonviolent protests. But Dr. King said that as he continued to think about the matter, he gradually gained a bit of satisfaction of being considered an extremist. Why? Because he said this, was not Jesus an extremist in love when he said, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, pray for them that despitefully use you? Was not Amos an extremist for justice when he said, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream? Was Abraham Lincoln not an extremist when he said, this nation cannot survive half slave and half free? Was not Thomas Jefferson an extremist when he said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal? Dr. King concluded, so the question is not whether we will be extremist, but what kind of extremist we will be. Will we be extremists for hate, or will we be extremists for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice, or will we be extremists for the cause of justice? Now, the second criticism is that Dr. King addresses is that even though the actions of Dr. King and his followers were peaceful, they precipitated violence because it caused those who oppose civil rights to engage in violence. Dr. King responds, but can this assertion be logically made? Isn't this like condemning the robbed man because his possession of money precipitated the evil act of robbery? Isn't this like condemning Jesus because his unique God consciousness and never ceasing devotion to his will precipitated the evil act of crucifixion? We must come to see that it is immoral to urge an individual to withdraw his efforts to gain his basic constitutional rights because the quest precipitates violence. Society must protect the robbed and punish the robber. Now, the third criticism that Dr. King addresses is that his actions are untimely. Dr. King said that he received a letter that same morning from a white brother in Texas, which said, all Christians know that the colored people will receive equal rights eventually. But is it possible that you're in too great of a religious hurry? It has taken Christianity almost 2,000 years to accomplish what it has. The teachings of Christ take time to come to earth. Dr. King responded with one of the most powerful explanations of time that I've ever heard. He said, all that is said here grows out of a tragic misconception of time. It is the strangely irrational notion that there is something in the very flow of time that will inevitably cure all ills. Actually, time is neutral. It can be used either destructively or constructively. I'm coming to feel that the people of ill will have used time much more effectively than the people of goodwill. We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the vitriolic words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. We must come to see that human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and persistent work of men willing to be co-workers with God. And without this work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. So friends, as you go back home and you work to end abortion in your state, as you work to educate those on your high school and college campuses about the evils of abortion, you will encounter these criticisms from both our friends and those who oppose us. But when you're called an extremist, I want you to ask yourself, do you want to be remembered as an extremist for the preservation of injustice or as an extremist for the cause of justice? Or when people encourage you to stop your advocacy to protect the unborn because pro-abortion opponents on your campus may choose to oppose your efforts with violence, remind yourself that it is immoral to tell someone to stop fighting for basic constitutional rights because the quest precipitates violence. And when others tell you that your actions to protect the lives of those who have no voice are untimely, remember, time is neutral. We can use it either constructively or destructively. Remind yourself that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It only comes through the persistent work of those people willing to be co-workers with God. But if none of that works, just look yourself in the mirror and say, do it! Thank you.